Many years later, when I saw Victor again, he had his fiancée by his side. I was there with my boyfriend. The whole table was filled with flattery and praise. People complimented him and Miss Moo, saying they were a perfect match, handsome man, beautiful woman. Someone asked when the two would tie the knot. He said, "Next month." His tone was gentle, his expression tender, a rare moment of warmth. But as he lifted his hand, almost unconsciously, he placed a peeled shrimp into my bowl. Chapter 1. For a second, the air froze. All the cheerful chatter abruptly stopped. Every pair of eyes around the table turned toward me. Pfft. I let out a soft laugh. Oh, my bad. Seems like Miss Moo and I happened to wear the same color today. I stood up gracefully and, passing by Victor, placed the bowl with the shrimp in front of Lisa Moo. Lisa's cheeks flushed a deep red. The atmosphere turned lively again. Everyone started praising how considerate and gentle Victor was. Victor didn't speak anymore. I lowered my head and stayed silent. "Sophia, you should eat too," Marco said. He peeled a shrimp and placed it in my bowl. I picked up my chopsticks, just about to lift the shrimp. Victor suddenly let out a quiet scoff. His gaze fell on the top of my head. Silent, dark, just like the day we broke up. Chapter 2. I truly hadn't expected to run into Victor Han here. The Han family's businesses were all overseas. During all the years I was with Victor, he never once returned to China. His Chinese was even a bit clumsy. Mr. Han and Miss Moo are getting married next month? I wondered if it would be held in China or abroad. Marco lifted his glass of wine. I tried to stop him, but it was too late. Congratulations to the lovely couple. May you have a long and happy marriage. Marco bent slightly, wearing a polite, flattering smile. I couldn't blame him. We needed this investment. But Victor didn't move, nor did he respond. His light brown eyes looked down on us from above, cold and distant. That was just how he was. When he didn't care for someone or something, one icy glance was enough. After that, he'd simply ignore you. Sure enough, he gave Marco and me one indifferent look, then turned his gaze elsewhere, as if we were nothing but air. Marco's hand holding the wine glass stiffened awkwardly. "Oh, it's just an engagement," Lisa said in her sweet voice, breaking the silence. She leaned affectionately against Victor's arm. "Victor's Chinese isn't very good. Maybe he didn't quite get what you meant. Don't take it the wrong way." She picked up her own glass and gently clinked it with Marco's. But before Marco could take a sip, Victor spoke. "And when are Miss Sophia and Mr. Marco planning to get married?" His pronunciation was perfect, each word sharp and deliberate, a question laced with mockery. Everyone at the table was shrewd enough to catch the hidden meaning in his tone. Silence fell again. A mix of curious and knowing gazes darted between Victor and me. I dug my nails into my palm, forcing a light, easy smile. "Soon," I said. Victor smiled too. He nodded slightly. "On the 6th of next month, Lisa and I are hosting our engagement party. You two are welcome to attend." Then he stood up crisply and turned to leave. "Wait." Lisa hurried after him. My shoulders relaxed at once. I heard her speaking fluent French. "Are we going home already? Do you know Sophia?" Victor replied. "No, I don't." Chapter 3. You know Mr. Han? On the way back, Marco asked me the same question. I couldn't say no as decisively as Victor Han did. Just as I was trying to think of how to answer, Marco smacked his forehead. "Right. How could you possibly know him? You two aren't even from the same world." I lowered my eyes and smiled. True, even after climbing upward with all my strength for 5 years, there was still an unbridgeable chasm between Victor and me, and even more so for the ugly duckling I used to be, mud-covered, stuck in the swamp. Yet, when I was with him, I didn't realize it. He was such a distant star. Chapter 4. I met Victor in Bordeaux. During the grape harvest season, the summer sun was harsh and burning. After a full day under it, your skin could peel off. But the pay was good. Half a month of grape picking was enough to cover 2 or 3 months of meals. I noticed Victor because he never tanned. While I roasted all day until I looked like a dark little groundhog, he remained a graceful white swan. I was jealous. "Hey, what sunscreen do you use? Share your secret?" I teased. He paused, then asked back, "Are you an exchange student?" His accent was odd. I immediately realized he was a banana person. Yellow on the outside, foreign on the inside. None. I don't use anything, he replied to my question. He couldn't even remember the name of the sunscreen. Not my kind of person, I thought. I was ready to retreat. How did you do it? He asked again. What? Being this dark, how did you do that? He stammered awkwardly. I admire it. I froze for a second, then burst out laughing. He laughed too. Sunlight fell into his light brown eyes, warm and gentle, like the glow of the moon. That was Victor 10 years ago. Young Victor. He wasn't distant or cold. On the contrary, he smiled easily. He liked wearing white t-shirts and chestnut-colored casual pants. He liked studying how to make his skin look healthier. He liked knocking on my apartment door every evening. Poor banana boy. Couldn't afford nice clothes. Had no time to go to the beach for sunbathing. Couldn't even rent a studio apartment. So he came to my place to escape the noise of his shared flat. Back then, I gave him a label. Poor. Even poorer than me. I was considerate enough not to expose it. Quietly, I helped him save money. Using my network back home, I found him cheap apartments in Paris. I helped him get easy part-time jobs. Every few days, I invited him over for homemade Chinese food to save him a few meals worth of expenses. It took me a long time to realize. Those few pieces of clothing he rotated weren't because he had so little, but because he had many identical sets. The noisy housemates he mentioned were actually the servants and security his father had arranged for him. And the vineyard where we picked grapes. That entire estate belonged to him. Chapter 5. Well, at least you've lived in France for so many years, Marco said as he drove. Your language skills alone outshone half the people at that table today. He squeezed my hand. This time, it'll go fine. He reassured me. The Han family's always been mysterious, if their heir's a little eccentric. That's normal. Don't take it personally. I curved my lips slightly. Victor had never really tried to hide anything from me. It was just that. At the beginning, there was a language barrier between us. His Chinese was broken, and my French was halting. My world was small, school, part-time jobs, my little apartment. There weren't many chances for me to notice how different he was. But once we started dating, the clues came trickling in, like an unseen stream. The tiny, unremarkable objects he carried. The restaurants he chose for our dates, the occasional careless way he spoke. Oh, maybe I had misunderstood. My boyfriend, apparently, was a rich guy, but that wasn't such a big deal. My father was rich too, a rich man with a heart of stone. After the college entrance exams, my mother sent me to France, determined to prove she could live just fine without him, because the other woman's daughter had gone abroad to study. I couldn't live worse than her, at least. Not look worse. Clearly, even back then, I understood that people were different, but I didn't yet realize rich people are different too. I truly discovered Victor's identity a year after we met. He'd whined and coaxed and pestered me to give up my grape-picking job, inviting me instead to his 20th birthday party. He said he wanted to introduce me to his friends. I didn't really want to go. He was a white-core kind of person, foreign through and through. His friends would only be whiter, different race, few shared words, and I'd have to spend the whole evening smiling in a foreign language. But the birthday boy insisted. He even prepared the dress himself. When my summer job ended, I went home to change and do my makeup, muttering under my breath. It's just a birthday, not an engagement party. Why the gown? Even the jewelry's matched. I threw on a trench coat and hurried out. By the time I arrived, the sky had already darkened. The address seemed wrong. The 5th arrondissement, by the Seine, a century-old chateau. If I remembered right, its gates were usually closed to the public. But my phone was dead. I wandered in circles for a while as the night grew deeper. Finally, I stepped forward cautiously. The two men at the gate recognized me at once. Sophia? I nodded. The great doors opened, and it felt as if I had stepped into Eden. The air shimmered with perfume and silk, a world of glittering elegance. People turned to look. Some faces I recognized from films, others from political magazines. Instinctively, I took a step back. Then I saw Victor. For the first time, I saw the Victor who appeared before others, sitting lazily on an outdoor sofa, surrounded by people, eyes downcast, glancing impatiently at his watch. But when he looked up and saw me, his eyes lit up instantly. He snapped his fingers, rose to his feet, and his smile bloomed, like a gardenia bursting open on a midsummer night. As he reached me, boom, fireworks blossomed in the sky. He took my hand, bent down, and kissed the back of it. His voice was melodic, like a mermaid whispering a spell. Welcome, my little princess. Chapter 6. Victor loved me, no doubt about it. Not just liked, he loved me. The passion of a young man burned like molten lava, growing hotter and fiercer with time. I was swept into a grand and dazzling dream, so vivid that even when I woke, I could still feel the heat of the magma lingering on my fingertips. Even though, in truth, there was nothing left but cold. I set the diamond ring down on the table. It was the last thing left between Victor and me. That ring, it was our 3rd year together, a morning as ordinary as any other. He woke me with a string of soft, delicate kisses. When I opened my eyes, I saw a diamond the size of a dove's egg. Sophia, will you marry me? After 3 years together, his Chinese no longer carried a trace of an accent. Kneeling beside the bed, his eyes were so clear they seemed to shine through me. When you graduate, let's get married, okay? I threw my arms around his neck, smiling. Okay. Sigh. I picked up my phone. It didn't take long for the news to spread. Barely half an hour after the dinner party, information that had once been airtight was now flooding the internet. The only daughter of the Mu family to wed mysterious top-tier tycoon. Top-tier tycoon? Do those even still exist? A rundown of the hidden aristocratic families abroad. I clicked through the articles one by one. Not a single mention of the Han surname, let alone a photo. What a pity. My old phone had been smashed by Victor Han the day we broke up. And my computer, I never brought it back to China. After years of dating him, I didn't even have a single picture of Victor. And today, I hadn't dared look at him for more than a second. But even without seeing, I could imagine, he and Miss Mu must look perfect together. My phone buzzed. Marco? Sophia. Marco was quiet. He had dropped me off downstairs earlier, and I could tell he'd been holding something back. Sophia, he finally said, taking a deep breath. No matter how this deal turns out, let's get married. I paused, then stood and walked to the window. The night outside was heavy and deep. Sorry, he rushed to say. That was impulsive. I shouldn't. Okay, I said softly. Really? He sounded thrilled. Then tomorrow we'll buy the rings. Saturday, dinner with my parents. Sunday, we'll visit your mom. Monday, we'll go get the... My lips curved up, but only halfway. By the black car downstairs stood a shadowy figure, skin still porcelain pale, a faint glow at his fingertips, the ember of a cigarette. When he lifted his head, his eyes found mine, unerringly. Victor. Chapter 7. I pulled the curtains closed. Victor and I had fought before, many times, for all sorts of reasons, because I joked with a male classmate in Chinese, and he couldn't understand, because he poured milk into the rice I cooked, because one sunny afternoon, he came to pick me up from class, only to find I'd skipped it to surprise him. But no matter what we fought about, it never lasted overnight. Certainly never like this. Him waiting downstairs, playing out some tragic drama. I put the diamond ring back in the drawer and locked it, turned off the light. In the end, Marco and I didn't make it to the civil office on Monday. We didn't even make it to dinner with his parents that weekend. Victor's assistant had replied about the project. They were very interested. But the proposal needed revision, and so the company plunged into non-stop overdrive again. As the founders, Marco and I worked day and night along with the rest. I didn't think Victor was using personal feelings for revenge. If he said the project looked promising, it was promising. If he said the proposal needed revision, it did have flaws. It wasn't out of spite for that night I left him waiting. By the time we produced the final version, the one everyone in the company approved unanimously, half a month had passed, and the next day was Victor and Lisa's engagement party. Chapter 8. I hesitated for a long time. wondering whether I should tell Marco about my past with Victor. Marco was a steady man. After breaking up with Victor, I returned home. My very first job was where I met Marco. He worked in tech. I worked in design. We collaborated for 3 years before deciding to start our own company. Unlike the romantic whirlwind with Victor, there was nothing particularly memorable or cinematic between Marco and me. We got together after closing our first big deal, celebrating with too much wine at the victory dinner. On the way home, Marco suddenly said, "We get along pretty well. Want to give it a try?" And honestly, there was no reason not to. I nodded. Our bond deepened later when my mother had a relapse, and the hospital couldn't reach me. They called my company instead, and Marco went in my place. From that day, he knew about my family, my past. Talks of marriage came later. Because of that one line I blurted out at dinner, soon. Before that, we weren't even at the point of discussing marriage. But hearing me say it, he must have taken it as a promise. That same night, he proposed over the phone. Marco had always been careful with love. Steady, cautious, deliberate. Just like the man himself. Forget it. He'd still need to negotiate directly with the Han Corporation for the project. Knowing about my old relationship would only mess with his focus. Victor had probably just returned to China for the engagement party with the Mu family anyway. He'd be gone in a few days. I closed Marco's chat window and opened my contacts. Scrolling down, I found a hand-drawn gardenia flower as the profile picture. The name, in capital letters, XU. That was Victor's WeChat account. Chapter 9. Victor didn't just have a WeChat account, he also had QQ. And even Weibo. Every account had only one contact, me. Oh, and he had a Taobao account too. For a while, he was obsessed with clearing out my shopping cart, ordering everything and having it shipped by air to surprise me. Childish. But then again, he wasn't the only childish one. I never imagined we'd break up. After that birthday party, I began to enter his world. At first, it was just the occasional gathering with a few of his friends. He'd hold my hand the whole time, never letting them pour me a drink or smoke in front of me. He'd introduce me openly, "This is my girlfriend." As his friends all came to know who I was, he began to introduce me to his family. The Han family kept a low profile abroad, but they weren't fading or obscure. Just in Paris alone, there were several branches of relatives, near and distant. Most of the younger generation were women. He never hid his affection even in front of them, pouring me wine, cutting my steak, peeling shrimp for me, caring for me meticulously, tenderly. I still remember one girl staring wide-eyed at me. Her name was Annie, Victor's cousin. When Victor stepped away for a moment, she leaned over like she'd seen a ghost. "Oh my God, how did you do it?" she whispered. Everyone knew I was Victor's favorite. He stayed in Paris for me, lived in a cramped 30-square-meter apartment for me. For me, the once proud, aloof young master turned into a gentle, elegant gentleman. I drowned in that tenderness, year after year. Back then, I didn't realize, even tenderness can be a weapon, a blade of gentleness, every cut fatal. Chapter 10. The first thing to be cut away was my apartment in Paris. It was small, yes, but perfectly located, reasonably priced, and owned by a kind elderly couple I adored. I loved that place. The year Victor graduated, he began taking over his family's business. Traffic in and out of central Paris during rush hour was unbearable, and commuting became inconvenient. So I moved into his villa in the suburbs. Then came the next cut, the part-time jobs. Victor had long been unhappy about how my side jobs ate into our time together. He didn't say much when he saw I insisted. But as he grew busier, I had to make compromises. Otherwise, we'd be living under the same roof without ever seeing each other. And then, what was cut next was something I can only call myself. I started spending Victor's money. My mother had sent me to France, scraping together enough for only the first year's tuition and living expenses. Once I stopped working, I had no income, and there were more and more things that required money. Victor started working, suits, formal events, business dinners. The world he moved in was no longer that of a carefree student. I couldn't keep showing up with ponytails, hoodies, and sneakers. There were also the social obligations with his friends and family. Each expense, on its own, wasn't something I could cover just by saying I don't want your bank card. Of course, no one says it's wrong to spend a boyfriend's money. And besides, those expenses were all for him, in one way or another. When I reported large purchases to him, Victor would often frown and say, "Sophia, what's mine is yours. Why are you treating me like a stranger?" Then he'd kiss me, again and again, until I gave in, breathless and laughing. That subtle discomfort I felt, the one I couldn't quite name, was smoothed over so easily. The truth was, I didn't have time to dwell on it, even without part-time jobs. I was busier than ever. Busy learning languages, busy learning to ride horses, to ski, busy studying luxury brands, independent designers, even the histories and cultures of Europe. Those golden sons and daughters of Europe, born and raised to shine, spoke French, English, German, Spanish, Italian, fluent in 5 languages, effortlessly. I didn't want to be the girl standing awkwardly at a party, lost when someone switched tongues. Didn't want to be the only one who needed Victor to teach me from scratch whenever they went skiing or riding. I wanted to grow closer to his sisters and cousins, at least understand what they were laughing about. I knew, deep down, that this was the distance between Victor and me. But when you're young, you don't always see the cliffs ahead. You just keep climbing, recklessly, desperately. Victor loved me so much, and I liked him too. Liked him very, very much. So why not try? Give it everything. Climb to the treetops. Scale the mountains. Get closer. Closer still. Reach out your hand. Maybe, just maybe, you'll touch the stars. Chapter 11. During that time, Victor clung to me more and more. If he came home and didn't see me, he'd search every floor until he found me. He brought back jewelry from auctions as if they cost nothing at all. And in bed, he'd whisper "I love you" over and over again. Looking back now, I think Victor understood me better than I understood myself. He must have already sensed it then, that one day I'd leave him. So before he went to the US for work, he asked more than once, "Sophia, come with me to America, okay? I've already found a school for you, same major. Or you can change if you want." I didn't notice anything strange. "You're silly." I laughed, wrapping my arms around his neck. "In just half a year, I'll finish my master's. Why would I start over in the US? Don't worry," I said, kissing him hard. "Once I graduate, I'll come to America to find you." I promised him my future so easily, but what happened later had nothing to do with whether I agreed to go or not. Because sometimes, the girl who keeps climbing toward the stars, burning with all her courage, suddenly stops, looks down, sees herself, and what made her stop was something painfully cliché. Victor's mother. Chapter 12. To be fair, Victor's family were all genuinely kind people. His sisters and cousins were impeccably well-mannered. Never once did they say anything inappropriate in front of me, nor show any hint of disdain. Even Annie, the most outgoing of them all, would only occasionally sigh for no reason and nudge me, saying, "Sophia, you're so sweet. I really like you." Then Victor would tug her by the ear and say, "Go away. That's my spot." So when Victor's mother reached out one day, saying she was coming to Paris on a business trip and wanted to have dinner with me, it was only natural that my mind leapt to the classic scene. Something like, "Here's X million euros. Leave my son." On impulse, I didn't tell Victor about the invitation. I wanted to see for myself what his mother really thought of me. I booked the restaurant 3 months in advance, practiced my dining etiquette over and over again, afraid of embarrassing myself. None of it mattered. Victor's mother sent a car to pick me up directly, and hosted me at the Han family's Paris residence. Dinner was an authentic Shanghainese meal. The entire atmosphere was warm, gracious. Victor's mother was beautiful, the kind of beauty that's carved into the bone, elegant and serene. She was also very talkative. Her Chinese was much better than Victor's had been when I first met him. With a soft Shanghai accent, she told me she'd never been to Shanghai herself, but her mother was from there. Victor's grandmother, she said, was French, which was why Victor chose to study business in Paris. She smiled as she spoke. Victor inherited his grandmother's lovely eye color and high-nose bridge. Then she turned to me and said, "You're very beautiful too. Last year Victor spent 30 million in Geneva on a diamond ring for you. Didn't he?" Her tone was sincere. "It suits you perfectly." I froze for a moment. I couldn't tell if she was emphasizing the price of the ring, or genuinely complimenting me. At her age, in her position, hiding her true emotions from a young woman like me was far too easy. When the blonde butler came to escort me out, he asked casually, in Italian, "Madam, is this the young master's girlfriend?" Victor's mother also replied in Italian, "Girlfriend?" She smiled. "Oh, forget it. As long as the kids are having fun, that's what matters." Chapter 13. I politely declined the butler's offer to drive me back, saying I wanted to take a walk after dinner. I followed the Seine, walking aimlessly along the water. Whether Victor's mother meant it or not, I understood it perfectly then. All those grand introductions, "This is my girlfriend," the extravagant diamond ring, the public affection, to them, it was no different from Victor naming a pet cat or buying it a fancy toy. As long as he's having fun, that's what matters. And suddenly, I understood Annie's occasional sighs. "Sophia, you're so sweet. I really like you. But it's such a pity, you'll never be my sister-in-law." I sat by the river for hours, lost in thought. Honestly, none of this surprised me. I had already written these obstacles into the script of my life. I never expected the Han family to accept me easily. That was fine. A girl fueled by stubborn courage only needs a few hours to recover. I was still young, only 22. I still had time, plenty of time, to climb higher, to prove to them that Victor and I were more than just a passing game. But perhaps fate had its own sense of irony. That same night, I received a call from China, from a hospital. After divorcing my father, my mother had developed depression. She'd been diligent with her medication, and her condition had remained stable for years. I hadn't returned home much, but we often video called, at least, until recently. In the past 6 months, most of my time had gone to Victor. That night, I took the first flight home. The hospital told me her depression had worsened into anxiety disorder. She'd been demanding to see her daughter, attempting suicide several times. I didn't even go home first. I went straight to the hospital. It was 2 in the morning when I arrived. The ward was loud with shouting. "Get out! All of you! Get out! Where's my Sophia? What have you done with my Sophia?" I rushed in, calling, "Mom!" She froze when she saw me. I stepped closer, reaching for her hand, but she suddenly raised her arm and slapped me hard across the face. "Whore!" she screamed. Chapter 14. I still remember, it was early summer. Paris was still cool, but Jiangqing was already humid and sticky. I hadn't even changed clothes. The back of my dress was soaked through with sweat. That slap silenced the entire hospital room. My mother tried to hit me again, screaming, "Shameless whore, let me go, don't hold me back." The doctor had to give her a sedative before she finally quieted down. For a long moment, I just stood there in shock, trying to confirm, yes, the woman in front of me was really my mother. I stumbled into the bathroom. In the cracked mirror, I saw my reflection, and a cold chill crawled up my spine, riding the trail of sweat down my back, all the way to my scalp. 5 years. Had it only been 5 years? Was this really me? The perfect curls, the polished makeup, the expensive clothes, the handbag worth more than most people's yearly salary. I knew someone like this. The woman my father kept. His mistress. I stumbled back, panic flooding me. My high heel pressed into my own foot, and I fell. My phone hit the tile floor with a sharp crack. Victor's name flashed on the screen. My hands trembled as I hung up. I needed to calm down. Maybe if I just calmed down, everything would make sense again. I sat in the corner of the bathroom, ignoring Victor's incoming messages, mindlessly scrolling through my phone, trying to find somewhere to release the chaos in my head. But all I saw were contacts, friends, and chats, each one connected to Victor in some way. Eventually, I opened my email, and there it was, a message from my thesis advisor. The tone was stern. "Miss Sophia, This is your final warning. If I do not receive your revised thesis by next Wednesday, your submission will be considered a failure. Please take this seriously. My mind went blank. I had submitted my thesis 3 months ago. I knew it wouldn't pass on the first try. But after Victor's mother arrived, everything had spiraled out of focus. I scrolled further down my inbox. It was overflowing with promotional emails from luxury brands. Mixed between them were several follow-ups from my professor. All ignored. I pulled up my grade reports. The first 2 years, excellent. Then good. Then average. This year, barely passing. It felt like that slap had finally woken me up. What had I been doing these past few years? Learning German, Spanish, Italian, horseback riding, skiing. But what about what I was supposed to be learning? What about the goals I once had? When I saw my mother's breakdown earlier, my first thought hadn't been worry for her illness. It had been, great, now the Han family will never accept me. The absurdity hit me all at once, and tears started falling before I could stop them. I was still young, only 22, and yet, I had already lost myself. Chapter 15. I broke up with Victor calmly. He flew back from France that very night to confront me. It didn't end well. He had always been an untamed young master, and I was his first love, the one who ended it. In the wreckage of that night, he kept asking me the same question. Was I not good enough? You don't want to go to America? You found someone better? Or were you just playing all along? No, none of that. I didn't know how to explain the storm inside me, the years it had taken to finally find myself again. So I said only this. I was just looking for someone I could work part-time with, eat simple meals with, sit in the sun with. Victor froze. His light brown eyes darkened, staring at me, but he had no more words. He kicked over the small garden table with a crash. Sophia, don't you dare regret this. I stayed silent, pulled my suitcase upright, and left, without looking back. Chapter 16. I never tapped on that little gardenia icon. I logged out of WeChat, pulled back the curtain and looked outside. That was the 15th night Victor had waited for me downstairs. Chapter 17. Early the next morning, Marco and I got ready to attend Victor's engagement banquet. The invitation had been sent to the company, with both our names written on it. We prepared carefully. Before getting out of the car, Marco was still fixing his hair in the rearview mirror. If I mess up later, remind me, he said. He was a tech guy. In the past 2 years, he'd learned to drink and socialize. It hadn't been easy for him. But this kind of occasion? Completely new. It's fine. I unfastened my seatbelt. Nothing will happen. We worked at a small, barely notable company. If Victor hadn't spoken rashly at that dinner, he never would have invited us. The people attending today were all big shots. Who would even bother to notice us? Thanks to all those banquets I'd attended with Victor before, I wasn't nervous at all. I calmly showed the invitation and was led inside. But the scene was different from what I expected. No violins, no champagne tower, no glittering gowns. The huge garden was empty. I glanced up at the sun. The invitation said noon, 12 o'clock. That was correct. This way, miss. This way, sir. They separated Marco and me. Even then, I didn't think much of it. After all, I had made things clear enough. I wouldn't avoid business interactions. But privately, I didn't want any more entanglements with Victor. Victor was no longer the passionate young man from 10 years ago. He had his pride and dignity. He hadn't clung to me 5 years ago. Why would he now? If the banquet were indoors, it wasn't unusual for men and women to sit separately before joining together. But when I followed the assistant-like person into a hall and the door opened, in front of the huge floor-to-ceiling window stood only Victor. Chapter 18. It's really hard to see you, he said. I stepped inside, and the door closed behind me. Victor didn't turn around. His tone carried a hint of mockery. My eyes swept over his back and then dropped to the carpet. I sighed silently. Want something to drink? Victor turned toward the bar. Isn't today your engagement banquet? He poured some water. 8 o'clock tonight. It's not a real engagement. He suddenly added. The Mu family wants to expand overseas. We want to return to the domestic market. The engagement will be dissolved in a year. You don't have to explain that to me. Silence hung for a moment. Sorry, I said softly. I must have mixed up the time. I'll come back later. I wrote 12 o'clock on purpose. He admitted it so directly. Only then did I look up and meet his eyes. Half a month ago at that dinner, I hadn't dared to look at him. It had been too sudden. That afternoon, after leaving his villa, I flew straight home and never contacted him again. Catching a glimpse of that familiar face again and having to smile and flatter him made my scalp tingle. He looked just as I imagined, even more composed, restrained. His presence was stronger than ever. The boy under the grapevine was long gone. Sophia, you still owe me something, Victor said, finally meeting my gaze. The light brown in his eyes carried a quiet intensity. I turned my eyes away. 5 years. 5 hours, what? Not enough? He had always been too gentle with me before. This sharp, veiled way of speaking, I wasn't used to it. My flight's at 10:30 tonight. I said, you're not coming back again, are you? I let my shoulders relax. Finally, I gave in. All right. Chapter 19. When you're in love, there's always so much to say. I used to love praising Jiangqing. I drew countless dreams for Victor. If you ever come to Jiangqing, I'll take you to eat tofu pudding. If you ever come to Jiangqing, I'll show you the gardenias in bloom. If you ever come to Jiangqing, I'll take you across the Yangtze River, 100 times grander than the Seine. Victor and I went back to change clothes before meeting again on the streets of Jiangqing. By late October, the gardenias were long gone. I first took him to eat some street food, then to the ferry. There were snacks on board. As soon as he sat down, he started peeling sunflower seeds for me. I looked out over the river, pretending not to notice. Then, Victor asked softly, "Is he good to you?" My eyelids fluttered slightly. The river was covered in mist. I knew it then. Back then, our separation had been anything but graceful. We'd never sat down to say a proper goodbye. It had already been 5 years. We shouldn't be sitting together like this anymore. We worked together, right? Victor smiled faintly. Does he eat with you? Sit in the sun with you? He actually didn't. Marco and I mostly talked about work. We rarely even had time for a meal alone, let alone to sit in the sun together. When the sun began to set, I stood up. Let's go watch it. After the ferry ride, we walked along the riverbank. I pointed out the sights along the way. Time slipped by quickly. What about your school? Victor asked suddenly. You said you'd show me your alma mater. There'll be lots of students this time of day. It'll be noisy. Still want to go? Let's go. So I took him to the school where I'd studied for 9 years. The beef noodles near your house, I never tried them. He said. He still remembered. I brought him there. The night view of the Yangtze, I haven't seen it yet. He said. Mr. Han, it's almost 8 o'clock. I reminded him. Do you have to call me that? Victor's voice turned cold. His gaze fixed sharply on my face. I clenched my jaw and turned my head away. Victor lowered his eyes, fell silent for a while. When he finally spoke again, his voice was hoarse. Let's go. He set down his chopsticks. I followed. You should head back to your hotel. I said. I won't go with you. At least walk me to the street? I nodded. The noodle shop was in a residential area. To reach the main road, we had to pass through a few narrow alleys. The night suddenly grew very quiet. There was the whisper of wind, the soft rustle of fallen leaves. I walked 2 steps ahead of Victor, looking down to see his shadow following close behind. He didn't fall behind, not even once. His gaze seemed to wander somewhere unknown. When we reached the end of the alley, he suddenly stopped. I turned back. The streetlight didn't reach into the alley. I stood in the light. He stood in the dark. We're here, I said. He didn't answer. From the shadows, his eyes reflected the moonlight, slowly falling on me. Mr. Han, I reminded him. His gaze shifted slightly. You're not even going to say a proper goodbye? I froze, my hand tightening into a fist. Forget it, this is the last time. I took 2 steps back into the darkness, rose onto my toes. Victor bent down at the same time. His familiar scent enveloped me. Left cheek, then right, a kiss on each side, a polite farewell. But before I could step back or even whisper goodbye, His arms circled around my waist. Sophia. Chapter 20. Sophia. Victor pulled me into his arms, his face buried in my neck. Come back, please? Sophia. Come back to me. I won't go to that engagement banquet, not for even a single minute. He held me tightly, his voice rough and trembling. I regret it. I never should have let you go 5 years ago. Come back. You can live wherever you want, France, America, China, it's all up to you. I came here this time just to find you. Come with me. And then what? I looked up at the moon hanging on the horizon. Then we'll be like before. Impossible. I said it calmly. How could it be impossible? Victor let go, his voice almost desperate. Those 2 years were so hard for you, that was my fault. You don't have to chase after me anymore. You just need to be your canary? I interrupted. There were so many things I had already figured out long ago. Back then, after coming back from the hospital in Paris, even before I broke up with Victor, I had already understood. A family with generations of accumulated power and wealth. How could I ever catch up to that? To reach for the stars was always a joke, because beside the stars, there will only ever be other stars. Victor, for the first time, I asked the question I had buried for years. If I hadn't broken up with you back then, if it had been the year we graduated, would you really have married me? Victor's fingers tightened around mine. His face went pale, as I expected. Even Annie understood this. How could he not? Perhaps from the moment we met, he already knew. He could never marry me. He couldn't marry me, but he could weave me a dream. He used his gentleness, his favoritism, his public displays of affection, his extravagant proposal, to weave a beautiful, dazzling illusion. He made me believe I might actually deserve to be his little princess, the one he would bend down to kiss. If not for that slap in the hospital, I might really have gone to America with him. And then, year after year, I would have turned into the very kind of person I once despised. And now? I asked softly. Even if I said yes, could you really marry me? He was the sole heir of the Han family. Even his engagement had a commercial purpose. If we waited long enough, waited until... I shook my head. No, I don't want that. I wasn't born to be someone's wife. I want to be myself. After all, I said again what I once told him years ago. All I ever wanted was someone who'd eat with me, work with me, sit in the sun with me. Victor's eyes shimmered with tears. He couldn't say another word. Thank you, I said softly, for letting me go back then. I smiled at him, took the diamond ring out of my bag, and placed it in his hand, and finally gave the farewell that was 5 years late. Goodbye, Victor. Chapter 21. I never went to that engagement banquet. I don't know whether Victor did. News in their circle was always tightly sealed. But 3 days later, I received a package. Victor had sent the diamond ring back to me. In the end, our company never collaborated with the Han Corporation. Their representative kindly explained that the Han family's domestic expansion had just begun, and we weren't their top choice. They even recommended a few other potential partners. Marco and I didn't end up together either. That day, I'd been taken to see Victor, while he'd been politely escorted out of the manor. He wasn't stupid, considering Victor's reaction at the dinner that day. He must have guessed something. Adult love is often about weighing pros and cons. Half a month later, he said to me, Sophia, I think we're better as partners. 6 months after that, when our project finally stabilized, Marco left the company. We remained friends. We'd still have a meal together sometimes, exchange gossip about the industry, that sort of thing. 2 years later, my company faced its first major crisis. I sold that diamond ring. The company came back to life and doubled, then tripled in size. 3 years later, my assets had already surpassed my father's. Bit by bit, I took back everything that once belonged to my mother and me. My mother's depression and anxiety never returned. She never mistook me for someone else again, and I never lost myself again. I knew who I was. I knew what I was doing, and I knew who I was meant to become. Chapter 22. I never saw Victor again, not even a trace of news about him. Our mutual friends, those connected through that shattered phone, were long gone from my life. Another 5 years passed. I fell in love with my biggest business rival. After countless battles of wit and will, we decided it was better to fight under the same roof. On our wedding day, the sun shone brilliantly. By some absurd stroke of luck, the road ahead of the wedding cars was completely clear, as if someone had cleared the way for us. The entire journey was smooth and effortless. The wedding was lively and joyful. My family, my friends, my partners, everyone laughed and celebrated. My new husband was so drunk he was on the verge of throwing up. But when I jokingly said, "Fine, hurry up and die so I can inherit everything and remarry," he immediately wiped his mouth and declared, "Raise me up, I can still drink." So noisy. When I finally half-dragged him home, we reached the courtyard gate, and there, tied to the iron bars, was a bouquet of gardenias, pure white, fragrant. Naturally, I thought of that old profile picture of gardenias, and of that promise, "If you ever come to Jiangqing, I'll show you the gardenias." Why gardenias? Victor? Do you know what you looked like in my eyes? Honey, be serious. What do I look like then? Like a gardenia, elegant and beautiful. Why? Because I always remembered that 20-year-old young master, whose smile bloomed the instant he saw me. Looked exactly like a midsummer gardenia in full bloom. Even if it was only a dream, it had always been a sweet and fragrant one. I picked up the bouquet. Still smells the same. Just like in my memory. My new husband stumbled over, grabbed my hand. "Wife, let's go home. In this life, you always meet two people, one who stays in your heart, and one who stays far away."